Kneel before me, human, the alien queen said, but was stunned by the human warrior's response. The stealth craft broke through the Varnix's planetary shield like a knife slipping through jello. If the jello were laced with quantum disruptor energy fields in an unhealthy amount of bureaucracy. Commander Reese Calderon leaned back in the pilot seat, chewing gum that had lost its flavor about 2 solar rotations ago, while casually overriding 3 layers of automated defense with a smirk and a code he got from a retired smuggler who owed him a favor. Technically, this wasn't a diplomatic mission. Technically, this was trespassing. But Reese had never been particularly interested in technicalities. He landed his ship with all the grace of a brick sliding across ice and stepped onto the alien soil of Varnix Prime with his signature swagger, half confidence, half irritation, and maybe just a touch of indigestion. His boots crunched over violet crystalline moss that whispered obscenities in a dead dialect of Glarnish. He ignored them. The train smelled faintly of ozone and rebellion. Within 3 minutes, he was surrounded by 20 Varnix sentinels in cerulean armor, all pointing weapons that hummed with an intensity that suggested they could vaporize a mid-sized mountain or at the very least ruin his day. Reese raised his hand slowly, but not before pointing at one of the sentinels' helmets. "You know that thing looks like an upside-down salad bowl, right?" he asked. The sentinel didn't laugh. None of them did. Tough crowd. He was shackled with magnetic cuffs, blindfolded with something that itched, and escorted, dragged, to what he could only assume was the capital. Along the way, he asked whether they had bathrooms on this planet. No one answered. The blindfold was yanked off in a flash of blinding light and a fanfare of sound so dramatic it would have made a Broadway composer weep. Reese found himself standing at the center of a throne room carved from black opal and arcing blue plasma, everything pulsing to a silent rhythm, like the heartbeat of a sleeping god. And there she was. Queen Shirella sat on a hovering throne that rotated every few seconds, purely for dramatic effect. Her silver-white hair cascaded like liquid starlight, braided with thin silver chains that flickered with stored energy. Her long ears, graceful, elegant, and unmistakably not human, twitched minutely as if adjusting to every sound in the room. She was regal, radiant, and glaring at him like she was debating whether to turn him into paste or something more exotic. The royal court stood around the edges of the chamber, dozens of long-robed officials, their heads encased in transparent domes filled with what looked suspiciously like scented mist. One of them was already taking notes, muttering something about planetary protocol. The queen rose, her voice slicing through the air like a vibroblade. "You stand on sacred ground, Terran. You enter uninvited, unannounced, and unarmed. Explain yourself." Reese blinked slowly. "I was trying to find a restroom. Google Maps said this place was public access." A few muffled coughs echoed, possibly laughter, possibly death throes. Queen Jirella's eyes narrowed. "Kneel before me, human." The air grew colder. A hush fell over the court, so heavy it seemed to thicken the light. Reese stared at her for a moment, expression unreadable. Then slowly, he drew the long, curved sword strapped to his back. It gleamed, humming faintly with energy. Gasps scattered like fireworks. He held it upright, then dropped it to the floor with a metallic clang. He took a step forward. "Kneel," he said, voice quiet but clear. "Only if you kneel with me." The silence that followed could have frozen a star. The court froze. The guards tensed. Somewhere, a musical AI responsible for ambient mood sounds short-circuited and played the sound of distant seagulls. Queen Jirella blinked. Once. Then she did something no one expected. She stepped down from the throne, slowly, deliberately. Her ears twitched again. And then, though no one would believe it later, her mouth curled into the faintest smile. "You are either the bravest fool in the galaxy," she said, "or the most foolish brave man I have ever seen." "I get that a lot," Reese replied. "Usually right before someone punches me." The queen turned to her advisors, who were now shuffling like a deck of nervous cards. "Place him in observation," she ordered. "Level 7. One of the advisors stepped forward. "Your Majesty, level 7 is your—" "I know what it is," she snapped. Then she looked back at Reese. "We shall see what kind of human kneels without fear." As the guards escorted him out, Reese glanced over his shoulder. "Just so you know, I make amazing scrambled eggs." She raised an eyebrow. "You assume I eat eggs. You look like someone who enjoys a good breakfast. Or a good fight." He was gone before she could reply. Jirella sat back on her throne, this time letting the rotation slow to a contemplative crawl. She stared at the sword he had left on the floor. It buzzed faintly, coded to its master. She leaned forward, brushing her fingers just short of its hilt. "Strange human," she murmured. In the corner of the room, the royal archivist leaned toward the diplomatic historian. "Is this how the Great War of 215M begins?" The historian shrugged. "Either that or a very confusing romance." Outside, the sky crackled with auroras. The planet Varnix turned, unaware that something had already shifted. Not through armies or decrees, but through a single refusal to kneel. The door hissed open with an unnecessarily dramatic flourish, followed by a polite mechanical voice announcing, "Welcome to Observation Level 7. Please refrain from licking the walls." Reese stepped inside and was immediately hit with the scent of lavender, fresh ozone, and what might have been burnt cinnamon. The room was the size of a small Earth penthouse, if the penthouse had been designed by a drunk architect who was really into floating platforms and gravity-defying waterfalls. Everything hovered. The couch hovered, the bed hovered, even the toilet hovered, and glowed faintly in an ominous shade of magenta. A translucent drone zipped in and hovered at eye level, its central orb blinking as it scanned him. "Greetings, occupant. I am JIP-9, your provisional domestic companion. My previous assignment was with the Varnix ambassador to the fungus moon of Katurg. He was very damp. May I offer you a refreshment or perhaps an emotionally inappropriate poem?" Reese blinked. "Got any coffee?" JIP-9 rotated in a circle, humming. "I have a steaming cup of approximation. Its chemical profile is persuasive." "That'll do." The drone extended a delicate arm with a cup of dark liquid that smelled vaguely like hope and motor oil. Reese took a cautious sip. His left eye twitched. "Okay, not terrible. Not coffee, but not terrible." He wandered toward the main window, a curved pane of smart glass that displayed a breathtaking view of Varnix Prime's capital city. Towers spiraled like frozen lightning bolts. Hover trams zipped through rings of floating vegetation. The sky changed colors in gentle pulses, as if the planet were breathing. Behind him, JIP-9 was still talking. "This suite has been calibrated to human physiological and psychological standards based on a 23% match with your recorded habits. For instance, the lighting adjusts to your mood." "Is that so?" Reese asked, glancing over his shoulder. The lights dimmed. "Don't get moody on my behalf," he muttered. "The Queen is watching you," JIP-9 added. "Probably." Reese didn't respond, but his smirk deepened. A day passed, maybe two. It was hard to tell time in a place where the artificial sun took creative liberties. The suite provided entertainment options, including interstellar chess against AI grandmasters, which Reese lost immediately, and Varnix soap operas, which he grew disturbingly invested in. By hour 8 of Heirs of the Plasma Heart, he found himself genuinely rooting for Lady Transl and her forbidden love with the shapeshifter disguised as a decorative plant. But eventually boredom kicked in. He worked out, using the couch as a weight when it floated too close. He explored the suite's menu, which included dishes with names like Molten Delight of Tentacle Root and Spicy Crunch Pod Surprise. He opted for something labeled Terran-compatible breakfast, which turned out to be a pancake made of compressed nutrient gel and topped with blue foam. It squeaked when he bit into it. On the third day, assuming the day-night cycle wasn't lying, a new sound echoed in the room. The soft chime of the security barrier disengaging. The Queen stepped in. She didn't wear ceremonial robes this time. Instead, sleek black armor clung to her frame like it had been woven from shadows and starlight. Her ears twitched once, adjusting to the room's frequency. Her silver hair was tied back, and her gaze was sharp, calculating, but not cold. Reese rose from the edge of the floating bed. "Didn't know we had a date. Should I've brought flowers?" She didn't smile, but her voice had a strange lightness. "You interest me, human. That is dangerous." "Usually is." I came to ask questions. Reese gestured to the floating armchair across from him. Interview or interrogation? Shirella sat with feline grace. That depends on your answers. He leaned back. Shoot. You stood before me in defiance, not with arrogance, but irreverence. Why? Reese tilted his head. Because I figured everyone else was too scared to say no. Someone had to remind you what it feels like. She studied him. And if I had ordered your execution, I'd be dead, but at least I'd die giving someone in that room a hell of a story. For a moment, neither spoke. The room adjusted itself subtly, the lighting warming a degree. Jip 9 floated silently in a corner, recording everything with the discretion of a nosy grandmother. Xyrella stood. You are not what I expected. Reese shrugged. Most people expect a meathead with a death wish. I like to keep my surprises evenly distributed. She walked toward the window, hands clasped behind her back. Do you know what your arrival has done? The court whispers of omens, of prophecy, of the stranger who defies thrones and disrupts fate. Sounds like a great way to ruin dinner parties. She turned, eyes flashing. You joke, but there are factions in my realm who see your presence as a threat to the old ways. You may have started something. Reese stood, walking to join her at the window. Started something or revealed something already broken? A pause. That, she admitted, is not a bad question. Just then the suite's wall flickered and a burst of static buzzed through the room. Jip 9 floated over. Incoming message from the Grand Archivist. Priority level 7. Urgency. Mildly panicked. Play it, Xyrella ordered. The projection formed, a bald Varnix official with the expression of a man who had not slept in weeks. Your Majesty, the Throneless have sent a communique. They demand the immediate execution of the human, claiming he fulfills the criteria of the Starbreaker from the old war lore. They've issued a threat of armed insurrection if he remains. Cyrella's face hardened. Reese sighed. So, am I getting evicted or upgraded to VIP? She didn't respond at first. Then, you are under my protection. Careful, he said. That almost sounded like concern. She turned away, moving toward the exit. You'll remain here for now. Reese called after her. Hey, quick question. Are your people always this paranoid, or is it just me? Without turning, she replied, We have been at peace for too long. You are the first true variable in decades. Of course they fear you. The door sealed behind her. Jip 9 floated closer. Would now be a good time to suggest meditation, or perhaps recreational cheese tasting? Reese dropped onto the couch. Start with cheese, then we'll talk about my Starbreaker prophecy. Jip 9 spun a little, as if delighted. Initiating dairy simulation protocol. Outside, the sky flickered. Somewhere beneath the polished layers of Corton power, old forces stirred. Reese Calderon stretched out on his floating sofa, arms behind his head, wondering if he'd just accidentally become someone important again. Whole damn galaxy, he muttered, and I still can't find a decent cup of coffee. The next morning, or what passed for morning on a planet with a creatively shifting day-night cycle, Reese awoke to the gentle sounds of Varnix chamber music playing from somewhere inside the walls. It sounded like someone teaching a whale to play the violin inside a tornado. He groaned, rolled off the floating bed, and muttered at Jip 9. Please tell me this planet has something close to bacon. The drone buzzed sympathetically. Closest equivalent, stripped brillax tail. Cured, slightly crunchy, tastes like regret and maple. Sold. As he chewed something that crunched like glass but released an oddly satisfying burst of sweetness, the suite's hollow panel blinked to life. Xyrella's face appeared in crisp, high-definition irritation. You're to be escorted to the central chambers. Wear something that doesn't insult the culture, she said, then paused. Actually, no. I want them to be insulted. Just show up. The panel shut off before he could offer a sarcastic salute. Half an hour later, after selecting the most neutral shirt he could find, gray, slightly wrinkled, with a tiny animated flamingo pattern that danced whenever he exhaled, Reese followed two silent guards down a series of corridors. The central chamber wasn't a throne room. It was more like a council arena, domed in silver light with panels displaying data, star charts, and, curiously, a live poll of royal approval ratings, which fluctuated in real time depending on who was talking. The gathered Varnix elite looked at Reese as though someone had let a feral goat into a math lecture. An elder stood. "This is the human? The prophecy breaker?" Reese gave a lazy wave. "Hey, do I get a sash or something?" A murmur rippled through the chamber. A tall figure in ceremonial robes pointed an accusatory digit. "You mock us even now? You stand at the edge of war and bring jokes?" Reese crossed his arms. "You guys ever consider that maybe taking yourselves less seriously would make life a little easier?" Zarella stepped forward from the shadows, her presence snuffing out the tension like a planetary wind extinguishing a candle. "Enough. This meeting is not to debate his existence. It is to determine how we respond to the throneless." At the mention of that name, several members visibly tensed. One sneezed in what Reese guessed was political anxiety. "They're pirates," Zarella continued. "Rebels. Fringe cultists clinging to the past. They demand war because they cannot control peace." A voice near the back, sharper than the rest. "They fear the prophecy." Another joined in. "They fear the Starbreaker. They believe he will unseat all thrones." "End the line." Reese held up a hand. "Okay, first of all, I didn't break any stars. Yet. Second, can someone explain what this prophecy actually says? Or are we just going off vague doomsday poetry?" A different counselor, eyes sunken and voice like rust, spoke. "In the final cycle, when silence ends and breath returns to the stone, the stranger shall kneel not, and in so doing shall unmake the crown with no blade." Reese blinked. "Okay, that's melodramatic." Zarella gave him a sidelong glance. "And unfortunately accurate." The chamber lights dimmed slightly, as if to acknowledge the gravity in the air. Reese ignored the solemnity and stepped forward. "So what's the plan here?" he asked. "I hide out in my glowing hover prison and hope the angry pirates don't get signal reception?" Zarella's gaze narrowed. "The plan is to investigate. We are not ruled by superstition." "That's great," Reese said, "but I've seen enough civilizations fall to know what happens when belief turns into bullets." She exhaled slowly. "You are coming with me." There was a collective inhale from the council. One advisor sputtered, "To the archives? With him?" "Exactly," she said. "The origin of the prophecy. We need facts, not fear." Reese clapped his hands. "Road trip with royalty. Should I pack snacks?" The archives of Varnix were located beneath the crust of the capital, down a long series of anti-gravity tubes and one particularly judgmental elevator that kept commenting on Reese's posture. When they arrived, the main archive chamber expanded in every direction. Endless rows of suspended memory orbs, floating data scripts, and what looked suspiciously like a librarian squid in a tuxedo. Zarella moved with ease, speaking a series of tonal codes that unlocked an ancient chamber sealed in a time stasis bubble. Reese followed, adjusting his shirt collar and pretending he wasn't deeply impressed. Inside the chamber, the air shifted. Time ran differently, slower, denser. The past hung like perfume. A single orb hovered in the center. "The original Starbreaker record," she said. "Untampered, untouched." Reese stepped closer. The orb flickered to life. A holographic projection emerged, grainy, sepia-toned. A hooded figure stood on a battlefield of black glass and ash. The voice came, distorted but powerful. "They will kneel, the tyrants. Not by sword or fire, but by the one who remembers to laugh." Reese snorted. "Now that sounds more like me." Zarella turned to him. "This changes nothing." "It changes everything," he replied. "Your people think I'm some cosmic prankster here to reset the board. They may be right. You don't believe that. I believe in what I can control." "Then maybe," Reese said, "it's time to question what control means." Before she could respond, the archive lights flared red. A piercing alarm screeched through the chamber. Jip 9's voice crackled through Zarella's wristband. "High alert. Throneless forces have breached outer orbit. Their ships are broadcasting one message on repeat. Surrender the human." Reese sighed. "Well, guess we just ran out of quiet options." Shirella didn't blink. Then we show them what happens when they demand a kneel, and get a punchline instead. He grinned. Now you're speaking my language. She turned toward the emergency lift. Come on, Starbreaker. Let's ruin someone's prophecy. The emergency lift hurtled upward with a velocity that suggested someone had replaced the standard safety protocols with adrenaline and poor life choices. Reese clung to the railing, his hair pressed flat by the G-forces, teeth bared in a grin that was equal parts excitement and borderline panic. I love how your technology is so advanced it can simulate death without the actual dying, he shouted over the roar. Shirella stood calmly beside him, arms crossed, balance perfect, as if she were on a casual escalator ride through a shopping mall, rather than being rocketed toward a potential planetary assault. This is the diplomatic lift, she replied. Reese blinked. Wait, diplomatic? What does the emergency lift look like? It skips the deceleration phase. Oh, fantastic. The lift burst through the ceiling of the archives like a bullet through silk, emerging into the grand skyway that coiled around the palace like a luminous serpent. As it slowed, a squadron of Varnix guards in sleek exosuits greeted them with barely concealed suspicion. Reese waved, earning a few side eyes and a poorly disguised snort from one of the younger guards. The palace had shifted into lockdown mode, floors reconfiguring, walls thickening, aerial shields humming to life above like transparent domes of quiet doom. From the observation platform, they could see the enemy fleet gathering just beyond the atmosphere. Dark, angular ships with red pulsar engines, shaped like thorns designed to pierce peace itself. JIP 9 hovered nearby, projecting strategic data and passive-aggressive reminders. I would like to remind the human that statistically, participation in intergalactic confrontations reduces life expectancy by 76%. Also, you left your nutrient gel on the breakfast counter. Shall I preserve it in case of post-battle munchies? Sure, Reese said, eyes scanning the screen. Just make sure it doesn't evolve into something sentient. Shirella issued sharp commands to her commanders, who responded with curt nods and synchronized steps. Reese watched, impressed. You do bossy really well. It's not bossy if you're right, she said. Touché, Your Majesty. The command bridge was nestled in the highest spire of the palace, with a panoramic dome that displayed both the beauty of Varnix's sky and the incoming hostility of the throneless fleet. Inside, holograms flickered with readouts, tactical overlays, and what Reese swore was a countdown labeled Probability of Imminent Irony. The Admiral, a broad-shouldered Varnix named Sten, stepped forward. They're broadcasting a demand, again. Same message. Surrender the human. They've added a GIF this time. Something about implosion. Charming, Reese muttered. Shirella motioned toward the comms array. Patch them through. The main display lit up with the face of a throneless commander, half of it cybernetic, the other half organic and unimpressed. He spoke in a low growl. Queen Shirella, we know the Starbreaker is with you. Surrender him now, or your palace becomes ash. Reese stepped into view. Hi there, just checking. Are we doing metaphors here or actual ash? Because I'm allergic to both, but one comes with less screaming. The commander snarled. You joke even now. I find it keeps the internal bleeding away, Reese said cheerfully. Shirella raised a hand. You will not dictate terms to Varnix. We stand by our allies, even the obnoxious ones. Wow, Reese said. It's like a friendship bracelet made of lasers. The commander cut the feed. Outside, the ships began to move. Sten growled. They're powering weapons. Shirella looked to Reese. We need to distract them. Delay their assault. You have 5 minutes. 5 minutes to do what exactly? Tap dance across the comms frequency? She smiled faintly. Surprise me. Reese looked at JIP-9. Pull up the diplomatic channel. All frequencies. I want to broadcast to the whole fleet. Warning, JIP-9 said. This is a deeply unwise use of galactic protocol. Perfect. Let's do it. The screen blinked. A blinking red symbol appeared. Live feed. Reese stepped forward, cleared his throat, and addressed the enemy fleet with all the gravitas of a man who once won a pie-eating contest by accident. Attention, throneless fleet. This is Reese Calderon, human, alleged Starbreaker, and future recipient of several therapy bills. Before you fire your terrifying weapons, consider this. If your prophecy is true, then your actions are only proving it right. The one who makes thrones tremble not with power, but defiance and humor. Lots of it. He leaned in. Also, let's be honest. What kind of villains threaten planetary destruction with an animated GIF? Seriously, what are you, bored teenagers on Space Discord? Several seconds of silence followed. Then a second broadcast came through, this time from a different throneless ship, one with a younger voice and a slightly embarrassed tone. This is Sub-Commander Trell. Just wanted to say, that was actually kind of funny. More silence. Then another voice. Permission to delay our strike and discuss this? He has a point about the prophecy logic loop. Reese turned to Shirella, who arched a brow. You just talked an entire fleet out of war with sarcasm. He shrugged. It's a gift. Behind them, Sten groaned. They're stalling. It won't last. No, Zarella agreed. But it bought us time. Gyp9 chimed in. Shall I prepare a follow-up broadcast involving interpretive dance and philosophical riddles? Reese grinned. Put it on standby. As tension settled into a quiet lull, the bridge remained lit with glowing lines of possibility. The battle hadn't begun, but something more dangerous had. Doubt. In the hearts of warriors and rebels alike, the image of a laughing man facing an empire was spreading, growing legs and rumors. Reese cracked his knuckles and looked out at the stars. Well, he said, guess we're rewriting destiny with punchlines. Not a bad way to make history. Hours passed, or at least that's what Reese hoped. Time aboard the Varnix Palace ship was a slippery concept, especially when the artificial lighting decided to simulate a dramatic dusk effect every 27 minutes. He found himself once again staring out a viewport, arms crossed, posture halfway between thoughtful war general and bored teenager grounded without internet. Behind him, holographic strategy maps flickered. The throneless fleet hadn't retreated, but it hadn't fired either. The diplomatic channels now buzzed with carefully worded hesitations and an increasing number of memes. One particularly baffling submission featured a stick figure labeled Reese Karate Kicking a Throne, made of cheese. It had 5 million shares across 4 sectors. Gyp9 hovered behind him. New transmission from Throneless Flagship. They're inviting you to a debate? Reese turned. A debate? Is that what we're calling hostage negotiations now? The invitation includes refreshments, JIP9 added, and a waiver of immediate disintegration. Well, now I feel special. He looked towards Shirella, who stood at the tactical display deep in discussion with Admiral Sten and a general whose eyebrows appeared to be sentient. She didn't look up when she spoke. You're not going alone. Wouldn't dream of it. I'd bring Gyp9, but he'd spend the whole time correcting their grammar. I would, the drone agreed proudly. Shirella finally turned to face him. I'll accompany you. Their leader, Rendok, was once Varnix. He'll remember me. Reese smirked. Old flame? Old traitor, she corrected. Ah, my favorite kind of ex. An hour later, they stood aboard a throneless cruiser that smelled faintly of burnt ozone and suspicious confidence. Its walls were darker than space itself, absorbing light like a black hole with low self-esteem. The meeting chamber was circular, flanked by 4 guards in jagged armor, and lit by an overhead projector displaying a rotating star map slowly being eaten by metaphorical chaos. Rendok, tall and cloaked in something unnecessarily swishy, stepped forward. His voice was deep, smooth, and just smug enough to make Reese want to throw a chair. Queen Shirella, and the human joke made flesh. Reese offered a mock bow. We try to keep it light. You know, for the kids. Rendok ignored him. You shelter a being whose existence destabilizes order across 7 systems. Funny, Reese said. My kindergarten teacher said the same thing. Shirella's eyes narrowed. You broadcast threats to provoke us. Now you want diplomacy? I want understanding, Rendok said, pacing the room like a professor about to drop a dramatic twist. The prophecy isn't a threat, it's a roadmap, the end of all crowns, the beginning of a new era. We're not trying to destroy Varnix, we're trying to free it. You're trying to rewrite fate by burning anything that doesn't fit. she replied coldly. Rendak turned to Reese. And you could lead it. The Starbreaker. A symbol, not just of rebellion, of realignment. You don't have to kneel to anyone, not even her. Reese exhaled. You know, you're all really obsessed with this kneeling thing. Is it a cultural trauma? Did one of your ancestors trip on a rug during a coronation? One of the guards let out an involuntary snort before coughing loudly. Zarella didn't smile, but her left ear twitched, and Reese took that as a personal victory. Rendak stepped closer. You have power whether you want it or not. Use it. With us. She will never understand what you represent. Reese looked at Shirella, then back at Rendak. Let me tell you something about understanding. She could have thrown me in a stasis cell the second I mouthed off in her throne room. Instead, she took me to her archives, let me read her history, meet her people. You, on the other hand, started with a threat and followed up with a buffet of ultimatums. So I'm going to go ahead and stick with Team Complicated but actually trying. Rendak's smile cracked, just a little. You'll regret this. You assume I haven't regretted everything since breakfast. The walk back to the Varnix vessel was quieter, save for the soft buzz of JIP 9 listing alternative definitions for diplomacy. Reese kept his hands in his pockets and watched Shirella's expression. She looked tired, but not defeated. Did I help, he asked, or just make everything more complicated? Both, she said, which strangely is exactly what we needed. Back aboard the Palace ship, the crisis team resumed planning. The Throneless weren't attacking, yet, but they were broadcasting stronger propaganda, now using edited footage of Reese doing absolutely nothing and labeling it divine refusal. One clip of him shrugging had gone galactically viral. A counselor sighed. He's become a meme of power, Sten groaned. Worse, a relatable one. Jirella motioned them all to silence. Let them watch. Let them wonder. Every day they delay, we prepare. The prophecy is a script they're desperate to follow. We're going to write something else. That night, Reese couldn't sleep. He wandered the observation deck, staring at the throneless fleet blinking in the distance like angry stars. Shirella joined him quietly, her presence more comforting than he expected. They think I'm some cosmic punchline, he said. You are, she replied, but sometimes the punchline changes everything. He grinned. You're getting better at this whole humor thing. I'm being completely serious. They stood in silence, watching the stars flicker. Somewhere out there, war loomed. But here, in this strange alliance built on banter and prophecy and not kneeling, something was taking shape, something unexpected. And that, Reese thought, might be the most dangerous thing of all. The lab beneath the Varnix Palace wasn't so much a laboratory as it was a mad scientist's fever dream held together by humming coils, blinking consoles, and at least 3 substances that defied the known periodic table. Reese squinted at a chamber filled with violet mist that shifted in unsettling ways, like it had emotions and held grudges. Is that thing watching me? He asked. JIP 9 whirred beside him, scanning. Technically, it's reacting to your neurochemical signature. The mist seems to find you hilarious. I'll add it to my fan club, right between the exploding chairs and the sentient elevator that tried to propose. Across the room, Shirella stood with arms folded, watching the scientists prepare the device. It looked like a torpedo built by someone who had read about torpedoes once, then decided to make it fashion-forward. Polished obsidian panels, curved antennae, a core that pulsed with star core resonance. This is the null veil? Reese asked, tilting his head. Yes, Zarella said. It temporarily severs quantum identity from prophetic entanglement. That sentence made me both smarter and dumber at the same time. The throneless believe in the inevitability of your role, she explained. If we can remove your entangled presence from their calculations, the prophecy may lose its gravitational hold on their belief. In English, please, or galactic basic. You'll become invisible to fate, JIP 9 translated, which is very on brand for someone who regularly disappears from responsibilities. Reese turned to Shirella. So this is, what, space magic therapy? It's science, she said. With side effects? Possibly. Reese narrowed his eyes. Define possibly. Shirella looked at the device. Temporal hiccups, memory drift, mild duplication. Mild duplication? We'd keep the original. Probably. Reese sighed, stepping toward the machine. If I meet another me and he's more charming, I'm punching him in the face. You wouldn't hit yourself, JIP9 said. Reese gave him a look. I'd make an exception. The activation process began with the usual fanfare. Humming engines, a spiraling light show, and a sudden drop in temperature that made Reese wonder if his eyebrows had frozen. He stood inside the core ring, arms spread, trying to look more confident than he felt. Zarella placed a hand on the control panel. If you come out, great start. You may feel disoriented. Try not to panic. Oh, excellent. I'm always calm when disoriented and possibly duplicated. The null veil activated. Light swallowed him. Then, nothing. Then, everything. He opened his eyes in a corridor made of shifting data. Symbols danced across the walls, none of them familiar, but all of them whispering truths he shouldn't understand. Time folded around him like a badly wrapped gift. He saw himself, twice. One version was eating grapes. The other was doing jumping jacks and shouting inspirational quotes. Focus, said a voice. Shirella's? No, deeper, older. He turned. A figure stood there. Female. Tall. Ears like Shirella's but longer. Robes of flickering stars. She regarded him with eyes that saw more than any mortal should. You are a variable. The joke that broke the loop. The laughter in the machine. Reese blinked. Do you have a name? Or is this the part where I get cryptic advice and wake up with a nosebleed? I am what remains when belief collapses, she said, and you are the question pretending to be an answer. I was hoping for something more comforting, maybe a pep talk? The figure tilted her head. They will not stop. They cannot stop. Not because you are powerful, but because you're unpredictable. Prophecies cannot bind absurdity. That might be the nicest insult I've ever gotten. A sudden pulse dragged him backward, through stars and stormlight, and one brief moment where he was definitely a duck. Then, he was back in the lab, flat on his back, blinking. The mist was clapping, or something like clapping. JIP-9 hovered overhead. No visible duplicates, nose intact, memory consistency at 78%. I declare this a miracle. Shirella leaned over him. You disappeared for 0.2 seconds. Are you all right? Either I saw the cosmic heart of destiny or someone slipped something into my lunch. Also, we're apparently winning because I'm weird. Good, she said, because Rendak is making his move. She helped him up. A hologram displayed the throneless fleet realigning, ships converging into a spear formation pointed directly at the Varnic system. One word pulsed in the broadcast. Ascension. Reese groaned. They really know how to overdo the branding. They believe this is the final step, Zarella said. They're going to try to crown you. As a symbol, they're trying to make me king of nothing. You could refuse. I've been refusing since the moment I got here, he said. That's kind of my thing. Outside, warning sirens echoed across the palace. People moved with urgency. Defense grids came online. Shields shimmered into place. The stars beyond held teeth now, and they were closing in. Reese turned to Shirella. If this is going to end with me on a throne, it's going to be my throne, built from spite and sarcasm. She smiled. That sounds almost Varnics of you. I'm learning from the best. Together they walked toward the command deck, where war loomed, belief twisted reality, and a prophecy waited to be shattered by the sheer force of cosmic absurdity. The stars hung like sharp-edged promises over the Varnic system, every single one of them blinking with anticipation, or perhaps just interference from the throneless fleet pressing in on all sides. From the command deck, Reese stared at the display, hands on hips, lips pursed in what he imagined was a heroic yet approachable pose. Shirella stood beside him, regal, calm, one ear twitching every time the word ascension flashed across the enemy's broadcast like it was part of some interstellar TED Talk. They're not backing down, she said. Of course not. They've printed merch. JIP-9 spun lazily above their heads, projecting a rough estimate of civilian escape paths, defense grid strength, and inexplicably a pie chart labeled prophetic overconfidence versus actual firepower. Pie chart says we're deliciously outnumbered, Reese muttered. They still think crowning you completes the prophecy, Zarella said. If we let them through, let them try, everything could collapse. Cosmically, politically, thermodynamically. Fun, he exhaled. So we need to break the story they're telling. Give the galaxy a new ending. Shirella nodded. Preferably one that doesn't involve the annihilation of my people. Well, no pressure then. A signal pulsed through the ship. The throneless flagship had requested Reese, alone, to descend to the central dais aboard their vessel. Final alignment, the message read. Let the crown fall where it must. He turned to Shirella. Let me guess. Trap? Oh, absolutely. And we're going? Obviously. The shuttle ride over was quieter than Reese liked. JIP-9 was running silent protocols, and Zarella had entered that intense Varnix battle meditation mode, which mostly involved staring at things until they felt guilty. Reese twiddled his thumbs and tried not to think about galactic destiny or cosmic entanglement, or whether the pants he'd chosen were sufficiently throne-worthy. They landed on a black marble deck ringed by obsidian pillars and propaganda drones. Rendak stood in the center, flanked by acolytes in ceremonial robes that looked like they'd been designed by someone who'd never heard of comfort. At the dais, the crown of fractured stars floated, glowing faintly, humming with myth. Welcome, Starbreaker, Rendak said. You guys really know how to make a guy feel like a breakfast cereal. Shirella stood beside him, defiant. You've gone too far, Rendak. You've let belief become your cage. We are unlocking everyone's cage, he countered. This is bigger than any one of us. The galaxy needs a symbol, someone above the old systems, someone who cannot kneel, who will not kneel. You. I'm flattered, Reese said, but I'm allergic to heavy headgear. Rendak stepped forward, eyes burning. Take the crown, end the old rule, begin the new. Reese walked forward slowly. Each step echoed louder than it should have. The crown hovered inches above the platform, all refracted light and impossible geometry. He reached toward it, then dropped to one knee. Gasps rippled. Rendak staggered backward as if struck. Reese looked up, grinning. Only if you kneel with me. It wasn't mockery, it was truth, challenge, invitation, and something else, something the galaxy hadn't seen in a long time, choice. Rendak froze. Behind him, one of the acolytes shifted uncomfortably. Another lowered their ceremonial staff. JIP-9 pinged an alert in Reese's ear. Rising uncertainty in enemy ranks, neural hesitation patterns detected. Reese stood, stepped away from the crown. You can't rewrite fate by copying it in a different font, he said. You want freedom? Then stop crowning people. Stop kneeling to ideas that stopped serving you 1,000 years ago. Make something new, something messy, something real. Rendak's hand twitched toward the crown. Jirella raised her weapon. For one moment, the galaxy teetered. Then Rendak let the crown fall. It clattered to the platform, its glow sputtering like a light bulb on its last watt. Silence. And then, from one of the acolytes. Laughter, nervous, then relieved. Reese exhaled. Well, I guess that's one way to abdicate destiny. The standoff broke. The throneless fleet, watching the feed, began to fragment. Not into chaos, but into conversation. Old leaders deposed, new councils forming. The spell of prophecy had broken not with a bang, but with a shared shrug. Later, aboard the Varnix Palace ship, Shirella stood at the observation deck with Reese beside her. They watched the throneless ships drift into different orbits, forming diplomatic lines, exchanging messages instead of fire. You turned a galactic prophecy into a group therapy session, she said. I have a talent. You could have taken power. Could have, but then I'd have to sit in chairs that don't swivel and pretend to like formal dinners. Shirella looked at him, eyes sharp. You know this doesn't end here. Nothing ever does. But the galaxy saw something today. Yeah, he said. They saw an idiot talk down a cult with sarcasm. They saw someone choose not to be chosen. That matters. Reese gave a lopsided grin. And what about you? Still think humans are a mistake of evolutionary whimsy? Shirella's mouth quirked. Only most of the time. They stood in silence a while longer. No alarms, no calls for surrender. Just stars. Peace, or something like it, in a galaxy that had forgotten the taste. Jip 9 approached, blinking blue. Would now be a good time to discuss retirement packages? Perhaps a beach planet? Later, Reese said. We've got a galaxy to disappoint. Together. And somewhere out in the void, the prophecy dissolved like mist. Not because it had been wrong, but because someone finally chose to laugh instead of bow. The end.